Hello, kia ora koutou. Good afternoon and welcome. Thank you for joining today's session on media and information literacy. My name is Natasha Ratarjic and I am the Schools Engagement Coordinator at the State Library of Queensland. I am joining you from Meanjin, Brisbane, on the lands of the Yagara and Turrbal people. On behalf of NSLA, I pay my respects to the traditional custodians and kai te aikai of the many lands on which all of us here today live and work. We also welcome today's panelists, Karen Brandwood, Digital Learning Librarian from the State Library of South Australia. If you want to pop your camera on and wave hello, Karen. And Mairead Kennedy, the Senior Learning Producer at State Library of Victoria, along with Dr. Kylie Stevenson, Associate Investigator with the Centre for the Digital Child, who will present to you shortly. Great. You can turn your cameras off now if you like. Before we kick off, just a few Zoom housekeeping instructions. To ask questions of the panelists, simply open the Q&A panel by clicking the icon at the bottom of your screen. To share thoughts or comments during the session, please use the chat function. Open the chat icon, select everyone or a specific panelist, type your comment and press enter to send. The chat is being monitored, so if you encounter any technical issues, such as problems with the sound, please put these into the chat. Any non-technical questions asked in the chat will be moved to the Q&A. Today, our focus is on the crucial role libraries can play in supporting media and information literacy skill development in primary school children from kindergarten, foundational prep to year 6. First, let me provide a little context for our discussion by providing a brief overview of media and information literacy, why it is a growing priority for libraries, and how the NSLA Learning Network arrived here today, leading this learning symposium. Earlier this year, the network gathered in Canberra to discuss how libraries can support the global need for media and information literacy, equipping citizens with the skills for informed critical thinking. These discussions sparked the idea for this webinar series, exploring ways libraries can foster media literacy in children, young people, and families. This is our second webinar in the series. We met yesterday online and talked about early childhood approaches. But here we are outside the Museum of Australian Democracy. As media and information literacy becomes an increasingly important priority, our aim is to leverage the strengths of libraries to support the communities we serve. Today, by sharing current library programs for children enrolled in kindergarten to year 6, focused on building media and information literacies, we hope to inspire you to create or adopt similar initiatives to equip primary school students, their teachers, and their families to navigate today's complex information network. So who is the NSLA Learning Network? We are comprised of representatives from all across Australasian state and territory libraries. As a collective, we focus on the development and delivery of programs that serve a wide range of audiences, including early learners, school-age students, and adults, which in every NSLA library looks different. A key part of our work is sharing our expertise and professional knowledge, as well as the projects that are benefiting our library communities, allowing us to learn, support, and adopt from one another. In our roles, we also serve as critical friends to the multi-literacy and learning programs across the network. Finally, we support NSLA libraries in their growth as learning organisations by modelling and nurturing a learning culture. This is central to ensuring that libraries continue to be spaces of innovation, knowledge sharing, and lifelong learning. We recognise that for many of us, media and information literacy skill building may still be a new focus for consideration for programming, and quite possibly the driver for your registrations today. We are not experts on every approach for integrating media and information literacy into your spaces, nor can we cover every example of how NSLA libraries are working to support media and information literacy skill building for primary school age children. And we acknowledge that many of you joining us today may be further ahead of us in this space that we have capacity to showcase today. And if that's the case, we'd love you to share your experience and programming into the chat. So what is media and information literacy? This refers to the knowledge, attitudes, and skills needed to navigate today's complex information landscape. This includes accessing, evaluating, organizing, and using information ethically across different formats like print, digital, and recorded media. The goal is to empower individuals to engage critically with information and to use it in ways that will promote lifelong learning and inform citizenship. E. Courtney Rattray, the United Nations High Representative for the least developed countries, landlocked developing countries, and small island developing states, that's quite a title, has a focus on sustainable development and media literacy in his portfolio. In an article published by the United Nations Chronicle, he outlined the following mandate for media and information literacy. This mandate highlights the critical role media and information literacy plays in shaping responsible and informed citizens in an increasingly complex digital world. As you reflect on this, consider how you might apply these principles in your own programs to not only educate, but also empower primary school age children to responsibly engage with media, fostering a more informed and inclusive society. So why is this important? Well, media and information literacy is a fundamental right that promotes lifelong learning and social inclusion, empowering individuals to navigate digital environments safely and critically. It addresses challenges like misinformation, hate speech, by fostering thoughtful and informed citizens. It helps combat truth decay by balancing fast with slow thinking, while encouraging curiosity and critical inquiry. In today's information-saturated world, algorithms often create echo chambers by reinforcing personal biases, which can lead to limited perspectives. Promoting media and information literacy is also a global priority, as outlined in the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals 4, Quality Education, and 16, Peace, Justice, and Strong Institutions. It has become a key priority across all levels, with governments and organisations increasingly integrating it into school curricula, such as the new Australian Curriculum version 9.0 and other national frameworks. These efforts aim to equip students with the essential digital literacy and responsible media engagement skills to help them combat misinformation and foster informed citizenship. So why libraries? Well, libraries have long supported media literacy by acting as community hubs for lifelong learning, and as they say, from the cradle to the grave. We collaborate at a global, national, and at local levels to deliver media literacy programs that support digital citizenship and critical thinking. And we are guided by and provide input into policies and frameworks that benefit our audiences. Here are just a few examples, including IFLA's media and information literacy recommendations and the Our National Agenda for Change, prepared by the Australian Media Literacy Alliance, of which ALIA and NSLA are members of the Alliance. This document was further supported by a consultation report produced by the Australian Library and Information Association, who is the national peak body for libraries in Australia. Really good documents, frameworks, and the links to these will be included in our post session newsletter that will come out. So that's a really quick, well-written overview of media and information literacy and why it's important. But where to begin? Now that we've explored and understand why it's essential, it's time to address how to best implement programs and resources that can build these skills effectively in our libraries. The NSLA Learning Network reviewed a few different methodologies and frameworks when we were in Canberra together. We were looking for a good model for assessing and building media literacy skills in children and young people that could help libraries craft programs to foster critical thinking and responsible media engagement. There are many out there, but we decided collectively that a great starting point is Edith Cowan University's model for children's digital citizenship, which focuses on 4 key areas: attitude, ability, awareness, and access, also known as the 4 A's framework, developed by Dr. Kylie Stevenson. Today, we're fortunate to have Kylie with us to provide an overview of the 4A framework and how libraries can use it to not only assess the capabilities of audiences they engage with, but also as a tool for self-reflection and personal development. Dr. Kylie J. Stevenson is an associate investigator with the Centre for the Digital Child, an Australian Research Council-funded centre of excellence, focusing on research about children aged birth to 8 years and digital technology. She has been researching families' lived experiences of technology since 2013. In 2022 and 2023, she led a digital child research project partnering with the LEGO Group Asia Pacific called Digital Safety and Citizenship Roundtables, conducting research with children and adult policymakers in India, Korea, and Australia. This resulted in 4 major reports and included the 4A framework. She is the co-author of the book Digital Media Use in Early Childhood, Birth to 6, and co-editor of the Routledge Companion to Digital Media in Children and Digitising Early Childhood. She works at Murdoch University in Perth, Western Australia. Please join me in welcoming Kylie.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. I'll just get myself organised. Great. So I'm coming to you from Wajak Noongar Boodja in Western Australia. So thanks so much for joining us today. So I'm talking to you about the project, as Natasha has just said, called Digital Safety and Citizenship Roundtables. And that was produced when I was working at Edith Cowan University. And I'm now an associate investigator working from Murdoch University with the ARC Centre of Excellence for the Digital Child. Now, I just want to say something about digital citizenship. Digital citizenship is a very large umbrella term, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. And under that umbrella sits media and information literacy skills and quite a number of other skills. So we were really investigating this. We worked with children across 3 countries, and we actually extended the age group. So the Centre for the Digital Child works with children, researching children birth to 8, but we extended that to 13 to include the first years of high school. So we conducted child roundtables with children in India, Korea, and Australia, and they were organised into groups of 3 to 5-year-olds, 6 to 9-year-olds, and 10 to 13-year-olds. Then we also conducted adult roundtables with key policymakers, educators, and key industry figures in those countries. Now, we asked the children to express their digital experiences in a number of ways. We used prompt cards for them to talk about their experiences. We had a drawing activity, we did show and tell, and we also used the Lego bricks in brick play activities. Now, after analysing all of the research data, so that's past research, policy, the children's input, so that's their drawings, their discussion, and also the adult stakeholders' input, we synthesised all of that into this outcome of these 4A principles. And essentially, they're ways to understand key factors in how we can support children's digital citizenship skill development. So you can see the 4As there on the graphic, but I'll go through each one of those one by one. So the first is ability. So what is that? Well, that's the digital skills that children and families have, including behaving well online and thinking critically. We made suggestions about how you could apply this in practice. So one way we suggested how we could help is by creating digital play spaces where families can play and learn together. The second A is awareness. What is that? Well, that's knowing about information available that can develop digital skills. There is an enormous amount of information out there. People just don't know where to go to find it. How might we help with this? Well, one way is to create a funny series of videos to show where people can find that help with all kinds of digital problems. The next A is attitude. So what is that? It's how people think about children's online activities and abilities, and there's an enormous range of the ways people think. How might we help support or even change people's attitudes? Well, one way we're suggesting is to appoint a digital officer to help students, teachers, and parents with all things digital. So the final A is access. So what is that? It's the things that affect children's and adults' online use or their education about their online use. How might we help? Well, we suggest facilitating a group of children who can talk to adults and other children about safely accessing the digital world. Now, we did come up with one final suggestion, a kind of central suggestion for the 4As, and that's a control tower for digital citizenship. And that phrase, control tower, actually was given to us from one of our adult participants. So what is that? So a digital citizenship control tower is where children and adults come together to make decisions together. How might that look? Well, we could facilitate a group of adults and children representing key locales and or age groups coming together to help make decisions about things to do with digital citizenship that are impacting their lives. So that's the 4As and the final recommendation. If you are interested in finding out more about the 4As, we actually have produced 4 very significant reports, but the one I really like to direct people to is this last one here that I've circled. They're all available free to download from the Digital Child website, and I'll share the link shortly in the Q&A. But the last one is actually turning all of those findings into a report for children. So it's a very easily accessible report. And I suggest if you're looking for a quick kind of grab of the information that I'm giving you here to go to that report. Now, I thought I'd share with you the final way that we communicated the findings. We included this in the children's report, and it was so successful we ended up putting it in the adult report because we showcased it at a conference and all the adults just spent the whole time making this chatterbox. So a chatterbox is one of those things you may have made at school where you open and close it. And so here we included the 4As with the central control tower and then some of our suggestions there for the ways that we could apply those 4As. You'll see there's a link down there where you can find me and more information, but I'll also share my contacts in the Q&A as well if you'd like to be in touch. We are going to be including some more information for you in the newsletter. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Kylie. I really love the icons connected to the framework. They're just perfectly matched with each of those 4As. And the overview shared really gives a succinct idea of how libraries can begin to use this framework to assess where they're at, where their programming might be at, and to think about what we can do to move forward in this space. As Kylie said, if you've got any questions specifically for her connected to the information shared, please pop those in the Q&A and we will distribute the links to those documents in our post-webinar communications as well. And encourage you to also continue to share any thoughts or reflections that you might have into the chat because we enjoy seeing that you're participating and finding some things of use there as we're talking today. Now, with a frame for how we might approach incorporating media and information literacy skills into our programming, I'd like to introduce Karen and Mairead, who will share examples of how our NSLA libraries are supporting primary age children, teachers and their families to develop media and information literacies. Please join me in welcoming them. Over to you, Karen.
Thank you, Natasha. Hi everyone, I'm Karen and I'm also here with Mairead for this section. So today we'd like to share 3 examples for supporting primary school students to develop media and information literacies, and they incorporate the 4 A's of attitude, ability, awareness and access. So these are curriculum aligned programs, online collections that support the curriculum, and primary research skills workshops. So to begin, I'd like you to pause for a moment and think about a national, state or territory library you may have visited in person or online. What was their role? What types of information did you find? And maybe there was something in the collection that surprised you. So primary school students are important to NSLA libraries, and they are welcome to their libraries to engage in a range of facilitated or self-guided programs, and also access a wide variety of information sources from collections. So through these programs and collections, learners engage with the stories of their nation, their state or their territory, and understand their library's role in collecting, preserving and sharing these stories. So this is important in a changing world that requires new stories and new perspectives on old stories. So understanding our past and the stories can help us to create informed viewpoints to actively shape our future. So these programs and collections can support students and educators to develop skills and capabilities to collect information from historical and contemporary resources. Also analyse patterns and changes over time, critique perspectives, and to develop empathy. One thing about the NSLA collections are the stories are often unique and not discoverable anywhere else. And they've got a strong focus on the learning areas of history and humanities and social sciences. So referencing the Australian curriculum learning area very broadly of literacy, students began to develop comprehension strategies. They begin with evaluating texts in picture books through to interpreting and analysing information and ideas. They compare content from a variety of textual sources, including media and digital texts. So on the top right of the slide, you can see here that the State Library of New South Wales offer a 90-minute curriculum-aligned program called Visual Literacy in Action. Here, students learn concepts of visual literacy, analyse a variety of picture book illustrations, view up close original illustrations, and illustrate a page using visual literacy concepts to create their own book. These skills are foundational for developing media and information literacies. So we're in the UNESCO Global Information Literacy Week, and according to one of their resources, Think Critically, Click Wisely, a key part of media and information literacy is understanding how content providers, such as libraries, construct different types of stories, how they shape content in presenting it, and what techniques they use to organise material that would be somewhat chaotic and difficult to understand. And then if you think parallel, there's the internet, and that carries a vast range of information to potential readers, and it's often curated with different and looser quality criteria than is found in libraries. So the libraries have curated curriculum-aligned collections available online for use in the classroom. And this content weaves together historical concepts such as continuity and change, empathy and perspectives, and it invites learners to access source materials and think a bit like a historian as they develop important life skills in critical inquiry and research. So the State Library of South Australia has a digital collection school resources, and you can see that in the lower half of the slide. And here, within this school resources section, there's some examples for Year 5 history with a poster from 1839 encouraging emigration to South Australia. On the far right, you can see a video, oral history with senior Kaurna elder Uncle Lewis O'Brien, who is speaking for country and providing a different perspective of colonisation and its effects on the Kaurna people. Or in the middle there, you can listen to a podcast for Year 6 history, which considers experiences of democracy for women. And this focuses on the campaign leading up to the successful vote for women's suffrage in South Australia in 1894. So the podcast includes excerpts from speeches of the time, newspaper articles, and letters to the editor. So these sources are accessible and organised with links to catalogue records and metadata for collection discovery. The information is credible and correctly cited, and these sources can assist students to develop important life skills to access and evaluate information with a critical lens. So in the middle of the slide, if you're interested in using primary sources, the National Library of New Zealand has a tools for primary source analysis, and this is in their services to schools section. It's designed for students to analyse a range of primary sources, and it's scaffolded around exploring, analysing and critically analysing sources, and it's for different skill levels. So when you use the primary sources for source analysis, it encourages students to consider the origin of the source, who was the creator and when was it created. It looks at the purpose. Why was this work produced? Is this source useful? Is there a bias? Do other sources verify the information that you found? And it also looks at different perspectives. Why would this source be considered reliable at one point, but biased at another point in time? So there's two examples, some curriculum-aligned programs and also some curriculum-aligned resources that are useful. To strengthen such strategies, some of the national libraries offer research skills workshops, and you can see that in the top left there, and the State Library of Victoria has one. And so Mairead Kennedy, Senior Learning Producer, is now going to share with you a little bit more about the Primary Skills Workshop.
Thank you very much. So in the majority of the programs that we run at State Library Victoria, we ask our students a question, and that question is, what is a library? So, thank you. Sorry, just putting on my camera. And this simple question, it tells us a lot about the students' understanding and connections to libraries. So often their answers might be pretty basic, like it's a place with books or a place to learn. And as we take them on a tour of the library and show them the library services and collection, we continue to ask them the same question to see if their thinking has changed. And it's really lovely to see how they broaden their understanding of what a library is, and most importantly, what it can offer them. We always finish our programs by saying that the library is their library, and we hope to see them back soon. For many of our students who visit us, they've never been to the State Library, and there are some schools who don't even have a library at their school, and they may not be connected to their local library. And if we have students leave our programs feeling like libraries are a place where they're welcomed and they belong, then we feel like we've done our job well. And this principle is something that really underpins all of the learning that we try to do at the library. So whether we're trying to improve research skills, historical thinking skills, or digital literacy, it starts with students knowing that the library is their library. And so I'm going to briefly show you one example from how we try to improve digital literacy at State Library Victoria for primary students. So this program is called Primary Research Skills, and we run a program both on-site and online. So in this program, we use a series of activities and games to get the students to build their understanding of what makes a website reliable or unreliable. We use something which is called the PADI test as the basis of the program. So it's an acronym for features of a source you can check to see if it's reliable or not. Now, the students need to compete against the teachers to see if they can crack the PADI test by the end of the program. And so I thought we could all play one of the games that we play with the students, and then I will check in to see if you can guess what the PADI test stands for. You may already know, but hey, we'll have a go anyway. So the game that I'm going to play with you is called First Impressions. So I need you to all channel your inner grade 5 and join in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you 2 web pages that we have, and I'm going to put them up on the screen for only 5 seconds each. So in that 5 seconds, you need to make a bit of a judgment call. Is it reliable? Is it unreliable? And I'll count down from 5, and then you can put your vote in the chat. So I think in the chat you can use emojis, or you can just say reliable or unreliable. All right, are we ready? First website. Okay. Oops. Sorry, I've given you the answers. Okay. What do we think? Reliable, unreliable? Oh, okay. Looking pretty unanimous. Great, great, great. Okay, I'm going to show you the second one, and then we'll come back to that first one to have a little look in a minute. I did like the emoji there. Okay, and our second page is this one. Okay, what do we think? Reliable, unreliable? Oh, amazing. Look what you have been able to achieve in just 5 seconds. And this is something that we say with our primary school students as well, which they totally love. So then what we do with the students is we ask them, okay, well, tell me, why was this web page unreliable? And so if anyone would like to pop in the chat, what was it that stood out about this page? No sources reference. Great. Anything else we can see that maybe is a bit sus? I know it might be small on you. Big ad, spelling mistakes, fantastic. Yep, I wish I could win that much money, but yes, it's a .com, looks dodgy. Oh, you're all pros, obviously. So again, we point out some of these resources, some of these elements on the page. And again, there's some absolutely ridiculous information on there, including that I think there were zombies on the goldfields in Victoria, which definitely didn't happen, but the students get a bit of a laugh out of that. And what we're doing when we're doing this activity is we write up all of the reliable or unreliable elements onto a T-chart we put on the board, and we try to get the students to start to use the language that is coming from the PADI test, which some of you, hint, hint, have already used. Okay, so let's look at our second one. Why do you think this website was reliable? It's a Gov website. Yeah, very good. Fantastic. And we do have a section where we do talk about domain endings, which is really useful talking through that with students. Yep, fantastic. So we've got links to sources. Amazing. fantastic, and they're all cited. I'm a little bit biased because obviously this comes from a state library, so I'm going to say it's reliable. Fantastic. And so again, we point out some of these elements. You probably maybe can't see it on your screen, but also like the time or the date when this was published as well is something that we point out to them to make sure that they're looking at that when they're researching websites. All right, so would anyone like to have a go at guessing what PARTI stands for? It is hard to find the date these days. What do we think? What could any of them stand for? PARTY. R is for references. Ding, ding. You got that? Some of the other ones can be a little bit tricky. It is for time. Very good. Not publisher, but it's T, it's for time, but authority, so close. It's actually for author. P is for purpose. And Y is for you. So we talked to the students about the fact that they were able to tell in 5 seconds whether or not a site was reliable or not. So it's talking about, what's your gut instincts when you're looking at these pages. And then we have a nice little poster that we hand out to the teachers they can put up in their classrooms when they get back to school. I must say that the teachers get very competitive with this activity, but it is really cute to see them working with the students. It's called, so PARTY, it stands for purpose, author, references, time, and you. The one that we use for secondary students, which you may have heard of, is called the CRAPPY test, which you probably may have come across that one, but this is like a more child-friendly one for our younger audiences. But I can pop that in the chat later. Okay, so that's just a little example of one of the activities that we do as part of that program. So I will hand it back to Natasha now.
My thing. Sorry about that. I realized I did not have my mic off, so I'll start that again. I was saying thank you to Mairead and to Karen for your very informative and also participatory session there. And I think the PARTY acronym is great because I love a good party, particularly when I'm looking at information online. And also a really key take home that with our primary school audience, recognizing that critical component to the programs we offer for them is to make sure that they feel welcomed in our spaces because they move on into our senior programs and for the high school, and being able to connect them to have that safe and welcoming and fun experience, experiential experience at the library is really key. So we have arrived now with all this information thrown to you, an opportunity for some question and answers. In connection to today's registration, you had the opportunity to put forward some questions that you'd like the panel to consider. And we won't have time to answer every question that came through, but we have time for a few. Following this series today, you will get an email again providing all the links and tips and tricks that came through today's session. You'll also be able to access this recording so you can watch it on playback. And then any questions or responses that have come through the chat and through the Q&A will be provided as well. We'll also connect you to your NSLA rep so that you can continue these discussions with them as well. And there will be a web page on the NSLA website that will provide additional information to support today's discussion. The question that we're going to jump into though right now, I've posed to Karen and Mairead to start. The presentation they've shared with us has showcased some of the engaging ways NSLA libraries are promoting media and information literacy for primary school aged children. What strategies do you think, in your own reflections and as you're preparing for today, can libraries adopt to support schools and help students develop these critical skills in an engaging and impactful way? Who wants to jump on that one first?
I don't mind jumping in.
Wonderful. Thanks, Mairead.
No worries. So firstly, I would say that you really want to build on having a positive association with libraries. So we can't take for granted that students, have a connection to libraries or really even understand what their use is for today. And secondly, I would provide schools with practical, easy to use resources, for example, for research skills. So many primary school teachers are not specifically humanities trained. They need and want help with teaching those skills. So you can provide notes for guides for note taking, for referencing, aimed specifically at that age group. And thirdly, if you're running programs, keep the learning intention and your success criteria simple and specific. So don't try to focus on doing everything, just really focus on one outcome.
Thank you. Did you have anything to add to that, Karen?
Oh, thanks, Natasha, and thanks, Mairead. Yeah, Mairead covered quite a lot. The only things I can think of to add would be obviously for your library to sort of make some connections with the local school, and if possible, you could collaborate on co-designing some programs that align with the curriculum. It really just depends on people's time and sort of their interest in pursuing that. And I guess the other thing is if there's opportunities to provide professional development for teachers through your library, just to get them in either online or on site to show them what your role is, the sorts of collections you have, and the types of programs that could be useful.
Yeah, I agree with both there. And I know at the State Library of Queensland, that's really where our primary school office sits as a showcase, show and tell of the things that we have, those introductory skills to help support them in their learning, and then hopefully building those bridges and pathways into continued connections with State Library. And showcasing, I think, oftentimes for our younger audiences, that there's so much more to our libraries than what they can see in one visit, to what they can find on online, and really giving them that curated experience and showing and telling them what we've got. So thank you for that. In the chat, Mairead, a few questions just targeted specifically to State Library Victoria. If you want to answer those in as an answer through, or if you want to chat to those briefly, do you want to take those quickly? We've got
So in the Q&A.
Yeah, Deborah and Alice have posed some quick questions about the workshop that you shared.
No worries. Do you mind just reading them out? They don't seem to be
Yeah, I
loading up
sure
for me.
can. So Deborah has asked, can interstate schools access the online State Library Victoria workshops?
Look, we will welcome anyone, by all means.
And you'll be able to reach out to Mairead after and connect with her. And the second one, the format or platform of your online research skills workshop. This is from Alice. Do you simply host the class online, or is it a ready-made resource that teachers and students can access in their own time?
We do host it in real time, yes. So we are hoping to develop some resources to also give to schools as well.
Fantastic. So thank you for those questions, Deborah and Alice. We had one more come through, or sort of a theme that came through the questions that were received with your registrations, which centered around AI, artificial intelligence, and how do we help our students navigate this changing world that's been created sometimes artificially with intentional sort of non-committal to who owns the information, and sometimes with very clear guidelines and purposeful intentions. So the question here was, what are the distinctions between AI literacy, information literacy, media literacy, and how can libraries promote digital fluency and citizenship in this context? And this kind of reminds me, Kylie, if you're still there, about how you mentioned the umbrella of informed digital citizens, that these are all different aspects that sit under this global umbrella of building these skills. So if you've got some thoughts, you could jump in too. Who wants to go first?
I'll just contribute about what's actually happening in the AI space in terms of children and research. So, the Centre for the Digital Child is developing a project called the Children's Parliament of AI, and what that's going to be is a group of children who come together and bring their concerns, and then some of those children will be trained up to convey that to other children, but also to take that to key policymakers as well, because children are often at the cutting edge of using technology and pushing its boundaries. But the other thing that's happening is there's a really big sweeping project coming out of Curtin University where they are prompting certain concepts and then demonstrating kind of the biases around AI. And that would be a really useful thing to do around media literacy. One of the things they search is Australian father, and then what comes out of that and how biased that information can be. Or they'll search Australian mother, and funnily enough, it's often a kangaroo, an Australian father or mother. So those sorts of playful ways of engaging with AI around information and media literacy would be really useful. I don't know anyone doing that yet in an actual education context who's developed programs, but certainly I'm sure some people who are on this are working in that space. And I'll leave the State Library of Victoria team perhaps to comment on that as well.
Thanks, Kylie. That's a good starting point and a great thing for us to keep our eyes out for. I think many of us would be interested in that. Right.
Yeah, I mean, this was a really big question.
Yes.
And I think the approach that I took with it was that I was looking at, well, what are the things that go across all of them? And it's that sense of literacy. So it is about, students being able to read, to write, to listen, to articulate, to reason, and to, understand the world around them. And my recommendation for promoting those skills is often going back to the basics. So, when you're teaching maths, you don't start by giving students a calculator. They need to acquire the knowledge of the building blocks of maths so that when they eventually get a calculator, it's to enhance their knowledge, not to replace it. And, there's some really exciting, cool things you can do with, generative AI, and it's not inherently bad. However, the skills required to use it effectively are actually quite sophisticated. We talk with our students about, you have to have the ability to write clear, specific prompts to get effective answers. You yourself need to have the knowledge of the content to be able to assess if it's accurate or not, because, it can sound authoritative even when it gives you incorrect information. As Kylie was just talking about, you need to be able to evaluate the biases that are inherent in the data sets that they're drawing from. And you also need to acknowledge that some of the content, may have even been plagiarized by artists or academics that's in there. So, that's a lot for a grade 5 student to be able to tackle. So what do we do? Well, one thing you could do is get your students to evaluate how effective AI chatbots in particular are as a research location. So we do that with some of our students, and we don't have to tell them. They're the ones who come up with a lot of these answers and responses. You can emphasize that there's no shortcuts to learning. Your brain should hurt, and that means you're getting smarter when you're learning. And also get them to list out the differences between, say, copying and pasting from AI chatbots as opposed to, having to go through the whole research process, and to see that, one's a lot more involved and has a lot more, ways to develop your thinking. And, teach the students the manual skills so that when they start to use the technology, they're going to be using it in the best way possible.
Fantastic. Thanks for that. And really critical. Many schools don't have access to librarians and that support. So if we're taking that on board in our own programming for students in primary ages, we can begin to facilitate and build those skills that they can then further on and continue to develop into their senior years in high school, and the assessments that they will need to accomplish, and just their general lived experience, being set up for a much better experience with assessing that information that's all around them. We're coming close to time, Karen, but I've got one more for you. We'll move on to the last question that I'd shared with the panel. And this one particularly focuses on that idea of balancing traditional resources such as books, our print materials, with the presence of social media platforms and AI content. So a bit of an extension of what we were just talking about. The question was posed, how can libraries effectively engage with and integrate AI content into their services while addressing those concerns about whether we should or shouldn't be doing it, and what we can think about when adopting new technologies?
Thanks, Natasha. Just in South Australia, within the team that I'm in, we do have a digital literacy programs officer, and he's starting to put together some sort of workshops and webinars and programs to offer to particularly to public libraries and public library staff, just to upskill them in terms of understanding AI, what it's about, the platform, what the intricacies are, and this is sort of quite good as a starting point that perhaps could have flow-on effects for library staff. If you've got someone like a digital literacy officer that can impart that knowledge, and then you can start sort of putting that through into your programs. I was also thinking that perhaps libraries could be involved in sort of the resource curation of AI generated content, and also be involved in verifying, say, the accuracy of the information. So I think following on from something Mairead mentioned, just, understanding, I think there's quite a lot of linkages between the literacies. There's certain things that you need to consider or know. And I guess the other thing is just maybe even working with your community, whoever it is. Maybe it's your community within your suburb or the city or a school, to understand what their needs and concerns are, and then maybe sort of facilitate some programs that might answer some of those questions.
Thanks, Karen. It reminds me thinking of the idea of primary source, where you want to go to that physical object, which all of our libraries, state libraries, hold, and then using those digital tools that we have been using to date to explore further those digital collections. It feels like this next step into using AI generated content or AI chatbots is sort of that next process of bringing those two worlds together. And just, I guess, as we learn more about who's creating those models that we're engaging with, what are their drivers, and understanding, I think going back to the mandate included, it's not just the users of the technologies, but it's also the developers. And if we're in those opportunities to develop projects using AI or integrating it into our systems, that we're aware of those aspects as well, and be able to, with confidence, share with our students and audiences that these are reliable, credible tools, and that you can use them with confidence. So yeah, that's sort of a wrap up. I think great discussion, Mairead. Before we wrap up, did you have anything to add to that?
No, that was fantastic. I mean, I am just a big fan of whenever you're thinking about developing a program or a resource or anything like that, just think about what is the learning outcome you want. Don't feel like you have to be using a technology just because there's, a bit of FOMO around, like you have to jump on board. Just think about what is the outcome that you're hoping to achieve, and then go to, okay, well, what is the best resource to be able to do that? So in our primary research program, our students don't use any technology, and yet we're still teaching them the skills to be able to go back to school and use the technology effectively. So, just think about that when you're developing them.
Fantastic. Well, it's been a fabulous hour. Enjoy, and it has just gone by very quickly. I think from the questions that came out of the registrations, we could develop another series of webinars to dive deeper. This is a very introductory look at what's happening across our spaces, and it's exciting. And as we wrap up today's session, thanks everybody for being involved. It's inspiring to see so much engagement around these critical topics, and great to have Kylie with us to provide that frame. And those forays are really helpful in looking at where we sit with our own attitudes, where we look at when we're programming and we're looking or looking to refine or reflect on the programs that are currently in place. So I'd invite you, before you're jumping out, as everyone's saying thank you, to consider how you might apply those principles, the forays, individually or with your colleagues. I think we've got one more slide to pop up here, and also just some feedback on today's session. So one word you might use, chuck it into the chat, how you would describe today's session. Share a key takeaway or something you'd like to follow up on, an idea that you've been inspired to try. Definitely check out our state library websites. There's lots of information, and I know that we'd all be happy to have you connecting with us no matter where you are, and to use the collective resources to help your audiences. If you're interested in building media and information literacy skills in high school students, there's still time to register for our Wednesday Year 7 to Year 12 session. Note that the introductory content today that was shared and Dr. Kylie's presentation will be the front end of that presentation. We look forward to working together to empower primary school age children, their teachers and their families to nurture critical thinkers who will grow into informed citizens ready to tackle truth decay and contribute to an inclusive democratic society. Together, as we continue to work in building informed digital citizens, we can help shape a utopian future. This is for the book lovers out there, filled with possibilities and opportunities to counteract the alternative, those bleak dystopias limited by misinformation, ignorance, and polarized views. So continue to respond to those reflections in the chat. We're going to wrap up today's session. Thanks again for everyone being here, to everyone involved in preparing and presenting, and we look forward to hopefully seeing some of you again tomorrow. There'll be some music. We're going to stop talking, but feel free to add any comments into the chat until the recording stops. So with that, have a great afternoon.